What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today, for Top 5 Tuesday, we're going to be talking about the top 5 units that we thought were bad when we saw their kits or their buffs, but ended up becoming extremely powerful units and extremely good in the meta. So if you like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and Discord server, link down in the description. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So what's the motivation behind this video? Well, it's something we're going to be talking about later, but gauging a unit strength in Epic 7 isn't always as easy as it may seem, because there are a lot of factors that actually go to what makes a unit good. There are ratios, there are interactions that you don't think of when a unit is first announced or when a buff is first given, and you also don't know how people are willing and how far they're willing to push the gear, as well as that unit's meta, which eventually does lead to some very, very strong units that you wouldn't have expected. There's also just unit releases that come around at that time that also push the unit to a next level, as well as unit buffs or things that can change the meta, making the unit better. So with that, we definitely have gotten it wrong. Me particularly, I'm not perfect, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I've gotten every single unit released, right? I definitely make mistakes like everyone does, which is why you should always think before you pull a unit and watch showcases to see what people think of a unit, not just me. Because again, no one's going to get it right, and it's better to have a holistic view as well as make your own decisions. But that's for another day. Let's actually talk about the top 5. Starting with the honorable mentions, you kind of get an idea some of the units that I'm going to be talking about, and a lot of this will also have to do with things in the past, right? So things that have already happened. But for the honorable mention, I'm actually going to talk about someone, and I always bring her up because honestly, it's just something that it's crazy to think. But Samurai Seria, if you guys didn't know, Samurai Seria terrorized Epic 7 for a very, very long time. She is still a key unit in PvE, and she was one of the best PvP units for years, like literally for over a year, right? But when she first came out, when she first announced, people were like, she doesn't really do a lot, AoE decreased defense, right? That's okay, she's tanky. But we didn't realize how much damage you could really do with things like Drink, and how there was going to be protect the Seaside team compositions to the point where Seaside became a monstrosity of a unit, and she just kind of took over the game, right? And that initial miss is something that always, it's always a thing they have to think about whenever they release new units. There's a good chance that you're going to get it wrong, right? So definitely Seaside is one of those units that, looking back at history, you can never just judge a unit by its kit, right? Because there's a lot more factors to consider, again, such as ratios. Her ratios are ridiculous with Drink, right? And without Drink, Seaside's definitely not as strong of a unit, right? So it kind of does show the artifacts and the fact that things change in a second. By the way, if I do miss any of the units of the top 5, you think I missed a unit that's really broken, let me know in the comments. Again, I mentioned I'm not perfect. I'm going to get things wrong, and I will try to see. And if it's someone that's like really, really good that I really forgot, I'll make sure to pin it. Or if you think I'm wrong about one of them, let me know. All right, with that, let's actually get to the top 5, starting with none other than Violet. Now, this unit was a unit that when his buff got announced, everyone knew that Violet was going to be a strong unit, right? It was one of those things where like, oh, he's going to be a really good counter to water. No one knew that this unit would define a meta for months and lead Epic 7 into a very, very interesting territory, right? And when he was first released, people were using him, right? But no one was really first picking him right away. People were mostly using him to like counter things like Fairy Tale Tenebria. They were using him to beat big bruiser teams. But Carrot was still pretty popular at the time. What we didn't realize is that Rem and Emilia were right around the corner, and when Rem and Emilia were released and those big water units were released, he became significantly stronger. The other thing is that Spectre Tenebria and units like Belian also were released, who countered his counters, because Stena and Landy both lose to Belian to an extent, right? Because Stena doesn't really do too good against Belian, and Landy, you can easily reveal her and then finish her off with Violet, right? So two of his biggest counters got a counter, right? So the introduction of Rem and Emilia made Violet significantly better, and people start realizing, this Violet guy kind of broken. And now we have the meta that we have right now, with Violet just soloing teams, being good in aggro, being good in cleave. Just people found ways to use this unit to the point that I never really thought would be possible. But again, with the introduction of Rem and Emilia, it changed the meta, and it made him be at the top. And he continues to be one of the best units in the game, and some argue is one of the most toxic units in the game. But again, Violet, very, very interesting how from the buff that we just thought he was going to be a decent, okay unit, became really, really powerful. Now, at number 4, we have a pair of Soul Weavers, because both of these had the same reactions, and that is going to be DN and Emilia, right? So both Dian and Emilia are both support style units that give attack buff, right? And they don't particularly heal too much. What's really interesting is that people underestimate the power that supports can have in a game. And that's something we've talked about in the past in previous videos, but it is something that, because they're not actively breaking the game down, they're not actively hurting you, you feel like the units are not strong, right? Because when you read her kit, you're like, Emilia, heal, push. Isn't that just basically Oxlots, right? He pushes. It's like Oxlots with a heal, right? That's what a lot of people thought Emilia was going to be. What they didn't realize is how good it is to have a cleanse, a CR push, as well as an AoE CR push, as well as being able to cycle fast, because you have things like Tome that allow you to cycle for a Soul Weaver, would be on Emilia, and how many combos she would enable, right? That was something that a lot of people didn't visualize, and a lot of people really underestimated how strong this S2 really was with the 2-turn cooldown. Now, when I saw 2-turn cooldown, I knew she was going to be good, but a lot of people underestimated that. And supports are arguably one of the most underappreciated units when they're released, right? Whenever a new Soul Weaver is introduced into the game, or a new support type unit is introduced to the game, people tend to be like, they don't look that good. But then they realize, man, they're actually enabling a lot of stuff and being really, really strong. By the same lines, we have Dian. When she was first released, this was a very long time ago, there was a lot of people that actually skipped her banner. The reason being, they were like, she's a Soul Weaver that can't heal. That was the big thing, because Dian does not have any inherent healing, right? She has attack buff, crit resist buff, and she has the barrier and the one debuff cleanse, right? And she can cycle with this one. Nothing special. People were like, why do we care, right? We got Elson that gives us defense buff and attack buff. Why do we need someone like Dian? What people didn't realize at the time is how crazy her cycling is, and how good she is with Rod Amaryllis that allows her to actually provide some healing. She just became a staple core unit for all PvE content Epic 7 when she was first released. And this was like 2-3 years back at this point. I believe it was almost 3 years back, right? So it's a very long time ago. Meta was very different, and people didn't realize how good it is to have a cycling unit that gives attack buff. And at the time, Cleave was not that strong. So you would have Dian's sporting 260 speed, some crazy, ridiculously fast stats, opening the game with an S3. There was no Bazaar, there was no Landy, right? And people didn't realize how good attack buff and crit resist buff were, as well as a consistent barrier that she could put up. She was so meta, it was ridiculous. If you look back at Epic 7's first year, all PvE guides had this girl. And I was one of the unlucky few who also skipped their banner when I first started this game. Very, very fun experiences at the time, but it really does show you that people really tend to underestimate supports. But now, at number 3, we have none other than a Taiwan. Now, this one was a buffed unit, but after the buff, a lot of people said he wouldn't be good. They were like, oh, all they're doing is giving him a stun? That's trash, right? Because they changed it used to be unhealable and decreased speed. They made this a stun, and the S2, they made it trigger if your ally was hit rather than himself. They're like, he'll be a niche counter to control units. He's not really going to do anything to actually, be a meta unit. Well, little did they know that a Taiwan meta would be pushed extremely, extremely hard, because, as you guys know, season 3 or 4, I'm starting to mix up my seasons. I believe it was season 3, became the Golden Boys era, and a Taiwan was the one leading that charge. Season 3 meta was extremely slow, right? And with Last Order Crawl, if you had access to Last Order Crawl and a Taiwan, you could bulk up, tank up, and just control the absolute pace of the game, because you'd be able to have this S3, and people ignore the fact that the Soul Burn would allow you to spam that skill, spam the stuns, spam the decreased speeds, and just take full control of the fight, and make it to a point that the opponent could literally not move, because you're able to consistently stun and slow down. Right? So extremely, extremely good unit. He's definitely fallen off from where he was. We have a lot more answers to him. There's a lot more high effectiveness units. There's a lot more cleansers that can actually deal with him properly. There's a lot of different units, but he still remains extremely unique with this S3, as well as defending your team from a lot of the debuffs that Fairy Tail Tenebria was putting up. So overall, a Taiwan was a key player in the Golden Boys era. Really, really powerful unit at the time. People used to say that you couldn't make Legend without a Taiwan, and that's how strong he was. But after the buff, if you saw, people used to have him like at a very lowly rate. So it does show that people very much miss the mark on units because they don't realize how impactful things are going to be. No one knew that the meta was going to be that slow and that was going to benefit a Taiwan that much, right? It's very hard to predict that. No one knew how far we're going to push them. No one knew that people were going to go with a tank cleave build, right? There's a lot of really cool things that happen. Now, he's a lot more balanced. He is more of an effect control knight. People don't really use him in damage anymore. They use him more for the control aspect. And he's a little bit more RNG since fights do tend to end quicker. There are very few times that you really do get to use this Sovereign S3 with a Taiwan, but still, one S3 can win you the fights. So he's going to be the number 3. But now, at the number 2, we have some of the more recent units. And we have, in this one, none other than Summer Iseria. And this is one of the units I actually did get wrong. Right? I always do tell people to pull limiteds because you never know how they're going to be in the future. You never know if there's going to be future buffs. But essentially, it's going to be a pretty interesting unit to combo with in Cleaves, right? Which she actually did end up becoming. So that part I did get right. But I did not think she would have the presence that she does now. And Summer Iseria is a testament that people are really bad at gauging unit strength because we don't think of all the implications that the unit has. And that's what Summer Iseria showed us, right? Because when she was first released, she wasn't seeing that much play, right? People were like, oh, she's unreliable, haha, 15%. Imagine using a unit that you get 15%ed, right? But with Violet becoming more meta and units being released that really supported her, really made her shine, just such as Ran, now she has become one of the best Clave units, right? The one thing I will say is that one of the reasons why people also underestimated her is because of her reliance on her artifact, which is why a lot of free-to-play players don't actually use her or play with her, is because you kind of need the artifact max for her to actually reach her full potential, because without her artifact max, she's significantly a worse unit, right? She goes from being like an S tier unit to like a B plus to A tier unit when she doesn't have her artifact max, just because that unreliability doesn't make her as scary, right? But again, no one really knows that. But assuming she's maxed out, she's an S tier unit. Her combo potential is just out of this world insane with Polides, with Cerise, and now with Ran added on top. She can easily set up the bombs and do crazy amount of damage. And even if she's not able to kill in one turn like a lot of cleavers can, the fact that bombs let you stun at the end makes it extremely difficult for the opponent to actually respond to a Summer Iseria cleave. The thing is that traditional cleave counters, like not traditional cleave counter, but more recent cleave counters that include Violet and even someone like a Ravi, they can't do much against these bombs because these bombs, doesn't matter if she misses for Violet, and for a Ravi, you do get stunned, so you're not able to come in with an S3 and potentially kill, right? It's a lot scarier for these type of units to go into a Summer Iseria because you're denying them a full turn that they just have to accept that they're losing that turn, and you can set up bombs and sometimes even perma-lock units. So Summer Iseria, definitely a testament to how oversight can happen because we don't foresee what units are going to be coming and how far people are going to take Summer Iseria to make really unique cleaves, right? So something that, again, you never know with a unit whether they're going to be good in the future. But at number 1, we have none other than Closer Charles. This unit, I don't think there was a single person who got it right. Maybe Astronax was one of the people that actually may have gotten it right because he actually said he felt broken, right? So maybe Astronax was one of the people that actually got it right. But Closer Charles, a lot of people slept on this guy, and he is terrorizing high-level RTA play because of how versatile he is, because of how much he actually does in just a very basic, cohesive kit. A big reason, honestly, for this guy is just the art was so bad, and because people associate good art with good units and waifus, the fact that his art wasn't good, people didn't really invest the time in him, and not as many people pulled for him to actually test him, right? Especially because we saw that there was going to be other units that are ML Euros that looked really cool that were going to be coming, right? So a lot of people did not pull for him, right? They kind of slept on him. They kind of let him pass. They didn't really think too much of him. But now he's like an incredibly powerful unit. So what does he actually do that makes him so powerful? Well, he functions like a Sedum, but better in a way, because he's a cleave aggro / unit. He sets up attack buff for your team and evasion, so you can make him an opener or a DPS. And I've seen both, and both do amazing. But the DPS build is the most standard, around 250 speed. With some bulk is what most people do, with Shepherd of the Hollow, which was an artifact that also got buffed recently. But they do it, so they set up attack buff for the rest of your team in a bulkier, aggressive team with things like a Ravi, Maid Chloe, LQC, you know, like slower type cleaves, but you're also pushing up your team by 20%, right? So you're getting advantage from an S3. This also does get past Polides because it's not a non-attack skill, right? So that part was really, really nice. And on top of that, you get evasion, allowing you to actually survive and take turns. Then there's the S2, where if you have a really fast Charles, you're able to open with S3, give your team CR push, give your team CR attack, and then you have something like an Operator Cigarette follow up, or if you're going aggressive, or even something like a Rimuru, right? You have them follow up with a big S3, get a unit to very low, and then he just jumps CR by 50%, potentially cutting in. He gets perception, he gets that extra damage, and he comes in and he executes a unit. And the opponent has to pray that they hit him through his evasion, through the Shepherd of the Hollow. It's essentially trying to kill a Rylot, right? So he becomes a Rylot that can AoE attack buff, right? And CR push. And then the S1 damage is also extremely, extremely nice. It is really, really good execute damage, and it does a really good job of actually finishing off units and finishing off the game. So he became a really good combo starter for a lot of aggro and cleave teams, as well as a hard to take out unit. And I've seen him in a lot of different drafts, right? And it's just so hard to actually deal with him because a lot of traditional stuff won't work against him, right? Like Polides is not going to do a lot. Ravi is not going to be able to cut. Some of the units that we got, like Rimuru, actually do really good into him, which is why you probably have to pick Rimuru if you do want to use Closer Charles now, just because Rimuru does have a really good matchup into him. But overall, extremely, extremely good unit, and a lot of people really miss how good he was going to be. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Peace!